President Biden wants to give you $7,500 under his latest proposal. We just got the details on the American Family Plan. I did some calculations as to what the average American could expect to receive under this proposal, and it comes out to $7,500 per person. This thing is mind-boggling huge. It's a $1.8 trillion bill. I've spent the last several hours breaking this thing down piece by piece as to what exactly you can expect stimulus-wise, payment-wise, cash-in-pocket-wise from this bill. So let's just go ahead and break this thing down. I've built a flow chart. That way we can better illustrate what exactly we can expect from this bill. So here we have a general overview of the American Family Plan. You can see I've broken this up into 6 major areas, one of those categories being other that's a little bit more random. Also, if you find that this flowchart is easier to follow, easier to understand than a typical video, let me know, because I'm constantly trying to make these infinitely complex subjects more and more easily digestible. So just let me know. Also, if you appreciate my efforts, just go ahead and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. So let's go ahead and start with kiddie care, daycare, if you will, or childcare. $225 billion in funding of that $1.8 trillion bill. So this is a major section. The first part that I want to talk about is funding to childcare workers. They have outlined to increase the minimum wage for these workers to $15 an hour. Now, I found this a little bit surprising because that $15 an hour minimum wage increase is such a hotly debated subject. I mean, we saw that in the latest stimulus bill as a proposal. It was very debated. So I wonder if they're proposing this to potentially change it with one industry. That way, a couple years down the road, they can say, hey, it's working for this industry. Let's bump everyone else up to $15 an hour. So it'll be interesting to see how exactly that pans out. Remember, this is just a proposal right now. Nothing is set in stone. Now, the next section that I want to talk about is just general child care funding. This is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge part of that $225 billion. It's going to be funding for childcare based on your income. They're going to kind of use a sliding scale here where low to middle income families will not have to pay anything more than 7% of their total income to childcare for children under 5 years old. So a cap at 7%, which would be huge. And they're citing that this would actually help churn that economic butter, if you will, because it will allow families, it will allow parents to re-enter the workforce as childcare expenses have only gone up. And many parents feel obligated just to stay home because the cost equation doesn't make sense. They feel they're basically gonna lose money if they go and put their children in childcare. So they're saying this would actually help the economy. That's what they're citing anyways. Moving on from here, we have the child care tax credit. Not the child tax credit. We're going to talk about that in a second. This is the child care tax credit. So this is an extension of a program that was made in the latest stimulus bill. It's basically a rebate on your child care. And this would rebate up to half of your spending on childcare for children under the age of $13, up to a maximum of $4,000 for one kid, or up to $8,000 for 2 or more kids. In order to get that full $4,000, you would have to spend $8,000 in childcare expenses. In order to get that $8,000, you'd have to spend $16,000 for your childcare expenses for 2 or more kids. But again, they're citing that the easier it is for parents to put their kids in daycare, the less financial burden there is, the more economic activity there will actually be, because more people will join the workforce. Now, if we go back out to the overview here, we can go to the next section, which is the child tax credit. Now, I wanted to make this a section itself because it's such a huge part of the bill. And I mean, this is like a true UBI or reoccurring stimulus payment. Now, I know a lot of people aren't fans of that. We're going to talk about the implications of all this later on in this bill. I'm just reporting what we have right now. Also, as a side note, because a few people have requested this, I've started a Patreon for my channel as well. So if you feel I've ever made anything easier for you, if I've ever saved you money, made you money, consider joining the Patreon. Of course, don't feel obligated. We'll also give you full Discord access. I'll have that linked in the description. It's just an either or whether you want to join as a YouTube channel member or Patreon. Some people just like choosing one or the other, but they kind of do the exact same thing. So that's linked in the description if you want to support my videos and things like that. But again, do not feel obligated because I'm happy to do this kind of stuff. So the child care tax credit, you can think of this as a $250 to $300 per month stimmy, as I wrote. It's a reoccurring stimulus payment. Now, this was expanded under the latest stimulus bill, but it would be extended under this bill. It would be extended to 2025. As of right now, it only lasts through the end of 2021. And how this works is for children between the ages of 6 and 17, you would receive $250 per month. For children under the age of 6, you receive $300 per month. Now, this is already a thing for 2021, and it's going to start in July when you actually start receiving these monthly payments. Now, there are 6 months where you're not going to receive the monthly payments, January through June of this year, but you'll actually receive those when you file your 2021 taxes as a lump sum. But July through the end of the year, you should be receiving these monthly stimulus payments per the IRS. Now, this is a really surprising thing because in that stimulus bill, they outlined that they were like, hey, Mr. IRS, if you can send this as monthly payments, that'd be pretty huge. And the IRS is like, you know what? I think we can make that happen. So I was really surprised to see that happen. This also expands the refundable aspect of the child tax credit. So in the past, you could only receive up to $1,400. This would expand it so that the tax credit is fully refundable. So if you don't owe any taxes, you'll actually just receive a full payment, which is huge and is basically like a reoccurring stimulus payment. So that's a big part of Biden's $1.8 trillion American Families Bill. Now, if we go into the other section here, this kind of jumps around a little bit. So first we have health insurance. What they want to do is to have 2 years of lower health insurance premiums for those who buy their own insurance. They're trying to make insurance more affordable. I mean, we all know that just the American insurance system is an absolute mess. I cannot believe how much I pay for insurance and I have zero health issues, but that's neither here nor there. And it's the worst insurance ever. It's basically like if I have a heart attack, okay, I'm covered. Anything else, whatever. Go get lost, sucker, basically is what they tell me. Anyways, they want to lower health insurance premiums for those who pay for their own insurance. And the White House says that this will save the average person $50 per month per person. So a family of 4, they're saying this will save you $200 per month, and they're spending or willing to spend $200 billion to make this thing permanent. So we'll see if that will go. I mean, health insurance, again, is one of those very hotly debated topics as well. Next, we have the earned income tax credit. And this is one of those things for all of you who say, hey, I don't have kids. Why don't any of these stimulus payments, why don't any of these stimulus programs help me out if I don't have kids? This is for those who don't have kids, especially. So this would make the recent increase permanent from the latest stimulus bill. Again, as you can see, that's kind of a reoccurring theme where there was new proposals made with the latest stimulus bill, and now they want to make that just a permanent reality for several programs. So this would increase the earned income tax credit, which you can think of this as a negative tax. Instead of paying in money for making money, you actually receive money for making money. I mean, when is there ever a reverse tax? Well, here's one. And this program is increased from around $530 to around $1,500. So it's about tripled, and the American Families Plan would make that permanent. Next, we have 12 weeks of paid family leave. Now, this is pretty interesting. It would be up to $4,000 a month for workers who take family or medical leave, and it would cover between 66 and 80% of your wages. The higher range being lower income workers would get a higher amount of their wages as a percentage. So between 2/3 and 80% of your wages would be covered for the 12 weeks of family leave, and 3 days of bereavement leave allowed per year paid. And bereavement leave is basically if you have the loss of a loved one, you can go to their funeral and not worry about your income because you'll be covered up to 3 days per year. From here, we have schooling. School funding of various kinds, all the way from 3-year-olds to college kids. So this is $400 billion in funding. This is a very, very significant portion of funding. Actually, probably will come out to more than $400 billion. The most significant portion is $200 billion in funding for free universal schooling for 3- and 4-year-olds. Next, we have $85 billion to increase Pell Grants by about 20%. Now, this is basically funding for students who are in need financially for their college payments. So it would be about 20% more funding for those students, and $109 billion for 2 years of free community college to all. Now, this one's interesting to me in that how cheap this would be to do. You think of $109 billion. Yes, that's a crazy amount of money, but that's like 1/3 of how much is spent on the stimulus checks. Stimulus checks cost $300 to $400 billion. 2 years of free community college is only $109 billion. It's kind of surprising to me that that's not already a thing if it's that cheap relative to the US economy. Also, an interesting story. So my hometown, I'm from a very small hometown, 2,000 people. There's actually a billionaire who lives in my town who has lived there since he was like 20. And I have a very small school that I'm from. I literally have a graduating class of 50. But this billionaire who lives in my hometown actually pays for everyone's community college. If you want to go to community college, as of like 2 years ago, he pays for everyone's college. So I missed it, but it's kind of cool that this guy who's like a billionaire in a tiny town pays for everyone's community college. Now I guess I can see how reasonable it is. $109 billion for everyone. Next, we have food assistance. We're calling it We Eatin' for $45 billion, $25 billion of which would go to expand the pandemic EBT programs. There would also be an expansion of free and reduced lunches at school. $17 billion in expansion for free meals for children. I'm not sure what exactly the difference is between these two. There's some kind of nitty-gritty details that we don't exactly have with these programs, but they were listed separately as line items. And then next we have help for formerly incarcerated individuals to be eligible for SNAP food benefits. And then from here, we got unemployment help. And this is another one of those areas that we don't have clear details exactly, but it would be some kind of automatic adjustment for unemployment payouts and the length of time in which you can receive unemployment. Again, we just don't have all the details. Now, many of you have rightfully expressed your concerns about how we're going to pay for all of this and what effect it's going to have on the economy. Now, the Biden administration, by wanting to pass this, is basically betting that we're not going to overheat the economy, drive up inflation, and make things worse. They're saying that the potential benefits outweigh the costs. I'm personally a little bit concerned about the lackadaisical attitude of the Treasury, the Fed, and the White House when it comes to inflation. I mean, we can look around and see that prices have gone up. We don't know if it's temporary, but I think it's something to at least consider, especially when this spending bill isn't the only spending bill. You know, we've had several major stimulus bills, and this is only one part of his two-part infrastructure/soft infrastructure bill. So there are major concerns with all of this, and I just hope that there is more and more attention. That way, we just know for sure that we're making the right decisions by passing these things. And of course, this will have to be paid for. And they outline some ways that they're going to do that by raising taxes. Wow, that really zoomed in. Ain't no such thing as a free lunch. There are taxes as a part of this bill. Wow, that is really zoomed in. The first one is top income tax. They would raise it from 37% up to 39.6% for the highest income earners. Under this bill, they basically say, unless you earn more than $400,000 a year, you don't really have to worry about tax increases. This will pretty much all be paid by the wealthiest individuals in the US. There would also be increased tax enforcement on the wealthiest individuals, basically more people hired at the IRS and just more loopholes closed in tax guidelines. And those making over $1 million a year would have to pay 39.6% on all income. Now, I didn't see anything in the actual bill text about the increase in capital gains that was proposed last week. So we'll see exactly what happens to that, but I think that'll be a hard-fought battle. Now, the question is, will this even be passed? And I think it'll be a struggle because in order to get this passed, even with budget reconciliation, which just seems like that's the path that they're going down because basically no Republicans want this thing passed, they need moderate Democratic support. Now, members like Joe Manchin, who are the most moderate when it comes to being fiscally conservative, he has supported infrastructure bills in the past. However, we're just not sure exactly to what level he's going to support these individual programs. So it will absolutely be a fight. There will absolutely be changes from where the bill sits right now. But I mean, we just don't know. There's been several major spending bills that have already been passed. And it's kind of like, they might be able to make this thing happen. So we'll see what happens here. If you enjoy this overview, again, don't forget to like the video, subscribe it, share it if you find it valuable. Check out the links down in the description for various deals, join the Patreon, things like that. I would like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.